welcome to our session. For those of you in person, I hope you had a good lunch, as we just finished that earlier. And those online, I hope you also have been enjoying the session so far. So we have a really exciting youth studio session coming up now. So I'm Natalie Magnus, and I'm one of the youth curators for the youth studio, and I'll be your moderator for today. So today's session is going to be on supporting young changemakers, engineering change in the society. And we have three really incredible guests joining us today. So Vivian Leung is a global education partnerships and program specialist at UNESCO. And youth is a key priority in her work, and she works closely with multi-stakeholder partners to develop the DG4 Youth Network to serve as the network and constituency for youth and students to take action on SDG4. Paul Muller is the co-founder of CoLeap. CoLeap's mission is to increase the supply of transformational social learning experiences by making teaching the most attractive thing any of us can do. Prior to founding CoLeap, Paul co-founded another education technology venture that helped students to break into the tech industry by offering real-world, community-driven learning experiences. And Adewale Olasupo is a student of English and Literature at the University of Abuja. He started his advocacy as a teenager in a disadvantaged flooded community in Ibadan, Nigeria, where he worked with One African Child Foundation together with some NGOs and the state government to educate them about proper waste management and climate change. And he's currently the Nigerian ambassador for Youth Opportunities. And he believes in the power of storytelling for positive transformation and that the future is fragile without proper education. So as you can see, we have really inspiring and experienced speakers here with us today, so we can't wait to get into the conversation. So without further ado, let's just begin with getting to know a bit more about how you all got into the field of education advocacy and just a bit more on your backgrounds. So we can begin with you, Vivian, then we'll go to Adewale and then Paul. So Vivian, would you like to begin?
Yeah, so thanks so much for having me here today. It's such a pleasure to be surrounded by real people after 2 years, although I know a lot of people are at lunch, but it's been so nice over the last few days meeting people and just exchanging, and I think that's what's really valuable about this platform that WISE has created to enable these important conversations on education to take place. So my personal journey, well, I actually don't really have an inspiring story of how I got into education. I really just got in because, I found a job and it was in education. So, I was, pursuing my master's degree in Paris, and obviously, as many international students, I think, can relate with, I was, thinking of what my next steps would be, how I could finally pay my rent and my livelihood in Paris, which is quite an expensive city. And so, actually, my first experience in education was an internship, unpaid, at the UNESCO Global Education Report, the GEM report in Paris, and I'd actually applied for a completely different internship back then at the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and only to find out at the very last minute that they couldn't hire me because I'm Singaporean, so I'm not an OECD member national. And I think the guy who wanted to hire me, he felt really, really bad for me, so he referred me kindly to his colleague at UNESCO, and that's how I kind of got my foot into the door. And so over the last, I think, 7 years that I've been, in the workforce, I kind of come in and out of education. I've, even did a stint as an auditor, also at UNESCO, so completely different. But ultimately, I came back to education. So I'll say that my personal journey is really one of making the most of the opportunities I've been given, and also making the opportunities at times where I felt like I had none. So for me, I'll say that I'm an opportunities advocate, because education equals to opportunities. And we can all think of how education has really changed our lives, and it's really thanks to the opportunities that we've been given. And this is why I think we're all here today, to ensure that the same opportunities are also, given to all children and all human beings around the world.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying about education equals opportunities. For 100% for sure. So now let's move to Adewale. So tell us a bit about your background and how you got into education advocacy.
Well, first, thank you very much for having me here today. It's really wonderful having this conversation about education with you two and with everyone in the room. So I grew up in a university community in Western Nigeria, at University of Ibadan. So pretty much I went to my primary school and then I went to my secondary school, still located inside the university. And everything about school then was just about going to school and then you get back home and then it's just like a cycle. It's just routine, something you do every now and then. So I didn't have any meaning to life. I didn't have any intention. I didn't have any aspiration. I just went to school because it was the thing you do every morning. You wake up and then you go to school. And what changed for me was immediately I got to GSS 3, and that's where you proceed to your high school in Nigeria. So I met with One African Child Foundation and also another organization. And then since then, they've been able to open my mind, and I had a mental shift in my perception about education and what I think education should really be in life. Because I come from a country where our curriculum is developed for maybe 30 years ago, 40 years ago. For example, we have some lecturers in our school that tell you, my exam questions are set 20 years ago. I can't change them for you. So you need to really read. So my perception about education changed since I got to know One African Child, and also to go to other NGOs and CSOs like Activista Nigeria, a group of young people that are going about everyday life, trying to advocate for education, advocate for good policy in Nigeria. So since that time, I had a mental shift in my perception about what really education is for. Education is not only about you going to school to learn A, B, C. I mean, it's the primary intention for you to go to school to learn how to read and write. But also, how can you change the world? How can you make impact in your society? So that was that was the thing I got away from joining this different organization. So they've been able to groom me to have more purpose, have more meaning to life, other than just waking up every day and taking things as it comes.
Thank you so much, Adewale, and for explaining how that discovering all of those things really changed your mindset. We'll definitely delve into that more shortly. So, Paul, you can just tell us again more about your background and how you got into this field.
Yeah, thanks so much. First of all, great stories. Thanks so much for your intros, and thanks so much for having me. My story is a bit different. After high school, I went to a small school in Lithuania, and I taught German there, which is my native tongue, for a year. And so I didn't only experience education as a student, as I did before, but also as a teacher. And you could really see both in my experiences having great teachers myself, but also the impact you can have as a teacher on students, that the power education can have in one, bringing opportunities, but also just inspiring people to do great things. So what I believe in is that education is one of the most fundamental issues we need to solve a lot of other issues that come by not being educated, not being inspired, not having the right opportunities. So after going to university, I worked on a couple of edtech startups, both on the nonprofit side, but also for-profit startups. I, for example, founded a nonprofit in Austria that during COVID offered free tutoring services. And now I'm working on CoLeap, which is essentially trying to increase the number of great teachers we have in this world, because we think if we can have a lot of great teachers, that will essentially help fix the education system we have, and also structure it around community-driven education, very much project-based education, that you don't only get inspired by a great teacher, but that you also have the network and the community that helps you to then apply it and get inspired as well, but also not just learn theoretical things, but directly have an impact on your day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much, Paul, for giving us a bit more insight into that, and also about what CoLeap does. So now we're going to get into the real questions now. So we'll begin with you, Vivian. So I remember you mentioning your expertise is working with youth in strategy and in high-level decision-making processes. So how do you think...
Just real quick, I can't hear you anymore. Maybe someone in production can fix that for me.
Okay, are you able to hear me now?
No.
Okay, it's all right because the question is for you for now. We'll give him a moment to reconnect. But yeah, so the question is basically how can we raise youth engagement and engage students and youth in high-level decision-making processes?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. Thanks so much. I think, we are all here today to ensure that every child receives a quality education. But when you think about it, those who are taking the decisions on what a quality education looks like, they themselves have been out of the education system for so many years. I think the average Minister of Education will have been out of school for more than 2 decades. I mean, I say the average because I know there's some who are very young today, and I don't want to, make a general assumption. But, even for myself, I've been out of, school for more than 7 years. So I could not even begin to tell you what education looks like today. For one, I've not had to spend 2 years or more than 2 years of my school sitting in front of a computer screen instead of in a classroom. And I think this is really why it's so important to listen to young people, because they alone know what it's like. And this is also the theme of WISE, Generation Unmute, because it's really time to listen. And the pandemic has also showed us how important it is to listen to young people and also their well-being. With over 90% of students and youth were out of school at the height of the pandemic, and that was the largest education disruption in history. And so in order to transform education, we need to transform the way that education interacts with its users, so the young people who are in school and studying. And this requires a power shift, because the power dynamics in schools and education right now are very much against the learners. It's very top-down. We know that. It's very one-sided, and there's not much agency in terms of for young people to take action. So really, it starts with shifting the power dynamics to ensure that young people are able to take action and to make the decisions on things that affect them, like their education. So I think at UNESCO, we really believe in positioning young people at the forefront of DG4 and education decision-making. And this starts with having, young people seated at the same table as other leaders, be it ministers of education, heads of UN agencies, leaders coming from private sector, foundations, civil society, etc., is to all have a voice and to all be able to come together to deliberate on the important education policies. And this also requires, having a constituency, which is really the principle that really characterizes what we call this new high-level steering committee for DG4, which really brings together these multi-stakeholder partners, including young people. And constituency means that, when they're at the table, they're not representing just themselves as individuals, but they're really there to represent the greater voices of the community, the group that they represent. And so what we've been trying to look at is how can we actually mobilize a group of young people to come together, to take collective action, and to also, be able to make sense of the diverse voices of learners all over the world. And there are also youth who are not in school, and their voices matter as well. I think that's really the important tenet of the leave no one behind in the SDGs. And so this is really why we created the DG4 Youth Network as a network for youth and students to take action on DG4. And it starts with, thinking about how we can bring all these diverse voices together. And we've been very fortunate to have had the support of, partners from all over, both within UNESCO, which is very important, and also externally. And so we launched this network last month, and we received, I think, over 1,000 applications. It was quite incredible, the quality of the applications we received, and there's so many young people out there, who are so ambitious and so much great ideas to share. But we decided to start with a pilot of 100 youth and student organizations to start with. So we're really at the beginning, and we're really trying to co-create with young people, ensure that it's youth and student-led. And this is guided by 3 pillars. So we're looking at, obviously, the governance on how youth and students can organize their representation on this high-level steering committee. And also looking at network building as something that's really important, because we think that young people need to support each other in order to achieve great things. And third, and last but not least, there's also, catalyzing joint action that is youth-led, and also being able to showcase it. I think at WISE, we've seen so many great youth-led initiatives, and it's all about just bringing people together and coming up with great ideas. So yeah, we just started, and as I said, like we really believe in the power of partnerships, and we really invite you to join us. So if you have ideas, like initiatives that you'd like to share with us, to join forces, we really look forward to hearing from you. And you can get in touch, obviously, online, Twitter, LinkedIn, or the Wise app, but also come talk to me. This is what we're here for.
Thank you so much, Vivian. And I really love how you not only shed light on like how we can increase youth like mobilization in SDG4, but also why we need to. Like you said, right now, a lot of people who are making decisions which affect obviously the education of youth are generally like quite much older, and they haven't been in schools for so long. And now with so many changes in society and with tech and the pandemic, education, the face of education has changed so much. So obviously that's why we need youth who are in schools right now to give a voice to them. So thank you so much for sharing a bit more about that. So we're going to turn to you, Adewale, now, and your work with youth opportunities, because I think your work there would definitely have given you much insight into the power of youth and how, and so like talk to us a bit more about that, and how also like volunteering with youth helped train you and allowed you to advocate better.
I'd like to start by talking about my university where I come from, because when I told my friends that I was going to be here, and I asked them what they would like me to talk about. So they just mentioned a lot of things that they would really like to talk about and what's really bothering them. And I think that's the voices of the youth that's telling already. And what's important for me is that there's so much young people can do to change the society and to change the situation with which they found themselves. Every society with their own dynamism, and we have a society and a country in which, for example, like what she said, like we have an education minister that's been there for, I mean, it's maybe out of school since maybe 40 or 50 years ago. So they really do not understand what's going on in the system. And so once I asked people what they really wanted in the education, they talked about curriculum. How can we change the curriculum in our country? We have a curriculum that just teach you how to get a job, and then when you go out, people tell you are unemployable. It's one of the phrases most employers use in Nigeria. In Nigeria, youth are unemployable, and that says a lot of things between the disconnection between the job and then the education you received to get this kind of job. So I think there should be a connection between your education and then the job force you're going to. And also, another friend mentioned, and I think it's important to say this, that we need many people, many organizations, companies, World Health Organization, multilateral organizations like that, to also partner with universities so that we can have young people job shadowing in different places, interning in different organizations. So you wouldn't just get out of the university and say you're looking for a job and you're asked to bring 5 years experience that you really do not have while you're studying in the university. And also, what's also important in education in Nigeria is that there needs to be security for young people that are in the education in Nigeria. Because recently in my university, we have these bandits really going around in the country. So they came to my university and abducted some lecturers in the university. So everybody was afraid, and some people didn't come to school. Some people withdrew their children. So there has to be a connection. There has to be safety for young people as well that are in school. And also working with One African Child Foundation and also working with Jumpstart Academy. This is an organization that I've been able to volunteer with. I've been able to recognize that there's so much more young people can do with volunteering. In Nigeria, you don't have all the resources to start maybe an NGO or a group youth-led organization or start up something with yourself, or you can start somewhere by volunteering to other organizations, by collaborating with them. And that's what I've been doing with Youth Opportunity. With Youth Opportunity, I've been able to, what we do at Youth Opportunity is that we are a bridge between opportunity provider and opportunity seekers. So we source for opportunities at different platforms, and then we have a Facebook account, we have a WhatsApp link, and then we have all these social media links that we're able to connect young people to opportunities. And it's really amazing what this opportunity can do to transform these young people's lives. So I think it's important. And also the last thing to add is what I've learned from my participation in different organizations, that advocate for equality education and quality education is that education is important for young people because young people can be the change in the society. I've come to see young people starting so many initiatives and so many projects, and they're excelling in them. They can be a part of this progress that we look forward to in the education system. And also, I think university would, perhaps they would listen. They will come to listen one day that they need young people in decision making. You can't be making a decision for young people while they're not involved in this decision making process because it affects them directly.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Adewale. And I think you hit the nail really on the head with in relation to our main topic, which is equipping young change makers and why we need to do that. And for instance, what you guys do at Youth Opportunities, and you described it, the bridge between youth who are opportunity seekers and then companies, NGOs, etc., who are youth. Opportunity promoters and providers. So I think, that's definitely very important. And thank you for explaining a bit more about that. So we're going to turn to you, Paul, now with our third question, which is what do changemakers need the most to thrive, and where can they find these skills, mindsets, and tools?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think maybe the most important one is actually just role models, just the belief or inspiration that they can actually do it, right? In a sense, our education system is built around you do that, you do the next step, and then you graduate from high school, and then you maybe go to university, and then you get a job. So it's very linear, and it's everyone should do the same things, right? But most young changemakers at one point realize that actually I can do more. I can start an NGO, I can start a project, or I can start just volunteering. And then they start to have impact. But these initiatives, these ideas only start if someone inspires them or if someone really shows that you can do it. And then I think that is a big part that's missing in our education system, because it's entirely built upon working to graduation, or you work towards university more than try to have impact, apply the skills you learn, and so on. And I think what we need to change is exactly that notion. And that comes back to a lot of other things that have been said here about who designs curriculums, who are the decision makers, how do we distribute opportunities. And I think that the amazing thing is that I'm very, very confident that this will happen, because education moves more and more to an online setting, to a remote setting. And that means opportunities are a lot more widely available. Opportunities are a lot more accessible. I'm able to do part-time things. I'm able to connect with inspiring role models globally, not just in my local community. So by moving this online, I now suddenly give inspiration on a global level, and I think that's very powerful. And we will need this inspiration on a global level to solve a lot of global issues. And I think we'll see a lot more of this in the next couple of years.
Definitely. Thank you, Paul. And I definitely agree with how you spoke about the change in the education system now, with obviously it becoming more online, and the integration of edtech, I think definitely also makes opportunities much more available to many more people. Of course, there's still issues like the digital divide, and how obviously there's inequalities in how much different people can access around the world. But still, I think overall, there's definitely a lot of scope for much more opportunities for youth to become change makers and get a head start on their careers, or make a change for something they're passionate about. So thank you for explaining a bit more about that. So now we're going to turn back to you, Vivian. And the question right now is, what can the current education systems do to encourage change makers? And I think this ties in really well with what Paul was saying earlier about youth change makers. So
I think we've heard a lot from both Adewale and Paul about how education needs to change. And in order to encourage change makers, obviously it starts with changing education. And so UNESCO recently launched the Futures of Education report, which puts forward a new social contract for education. And it's been, I think, more than 2 years since they've been putting this report together, which really brings together, key ideas, innovations, and visions of how the education of the future should look like. And what it really does is also spark a much needed debate on what education should look like, could look like, and working with all stakeholders, not just the usual decision makers, to make that vision a reality. And so I think reimagining education is key to our common challenges. And for me, I think what Adewale said about his experience of how it was a routine, school was a routine, and it had to break that routine by getting inspired, by getting access to new volunteering. Yeah, and I think that's really what is key. And that's what I think is called experiential learning, which is learning by doing outside of traditional classrooms. And we've seen how important that is during the pandemic when schools were closed, so learning either went online, and a lot of times it was not even on Zoom with, the teacher, but really through different videos, channels, and people that were just sharing the skills and their knowledge that was so valuable. And even in a non-tech world, I think we saw as well with the pandemic that in the rural communities, that the teachings and the skill transfers from, the families, from communities, and even villages was really what kept people learning when schools were closed, and a lot of them are actually still closed today, and that's really, really important. And for me as well, experiential learning is so key to teaching and learning about climate change and learning about sustainable development. And so UNESCO, for us, education for sustainable development is a very key topic for us. And so we launched the Trash Hack campaign last year in September, I think. And it really was, a way of getting inspiration at the global level, as Paul was saying, like bringing together different projects and actions that young people around the world were taking in order to reduce waste, showing how they could integrate this into their daily lives. And that was what made it so powerful. And I think it reached over 60 countries with young people just sharing ideas, exchanging, and learning from each other. And obviously, we can find these actions and skills online. There are probably many videos showing you how you can build a compost, how you can, make your own reusable mask even. But what's really powerful is when it comes from someone that you can relate with, someone that's of your own age. You see them doing it, taking that concrete action, and you feel like, okay, I can do that too. There's no longer a barrier between what is possible and what isn't possible. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, thank you so much. And your points on experiential learning actually ties in really well with a question we've just received. So just a reminder to those online and offline that you can send in questions to our speakers, and so that we can increase that interactivity. So we'll definitely love to hear your questions and anything you have to say. So the follow-up question to what you were saying is, what can change-making children? So we just spoke about how education systems can do that, but what about in the home and with parents?
Yeah, so as I was saying, I think the community approach is so important in experiential learning. And so definitely, I think parents, even neighbors, just people that you interact with on a daily basis, that's really where, you get to learn about new things that are probably things that you probably never think about. And yeah, I think we've also had so much research going into, the influence that parents have in upbringing, especially in the early years. And that's really something that is critical. I think there's not been probably enough support going into, helping parents to also be the educators and to really also encourage, I think, a learning mindset. Because I think obviously knowledge is out there, as Paul was saying, everything is online now. But really it's about facilitating that learning and that just thirst for knowledge that is sometimes, you miss it, and that's what makes education boring. School was very boring for me, I remember, and I was sleeping in most of my classes, but it was really that eureka moment when I think I found a topic that really piqued my interest, and I felt like, okay, this is really what I want to do. And yeah, these are those moments in life that are so important, and we really need to nurture them.
Well, I think just to add to what Vivian said, I think it's important that we should know that parenting is more than both your biological parent, just like Vivian has said, that it's also the responsibility of the community as well. The community with which you grew up is important, and we need to learn how to instill positive thinking and critical thinking in our children and young people like at that. Because there are so many people in universities today that they are studying what their parents want them to study. It happens a lot in Nigeria. You hear, oh, I'm just studying this. My dad says I should study law, or my dad wants me to study medicine, or my parents want me to do that. And when they finish it, they just throw it to their parents. This is what you want me to do. I'm done. And then they go for what they want to do. I mean, I find that there's so many people that wouldn't be able to pull themselves out, and you'll be able to actualize your full potentials by sticking to something you really have no interest in. So we should allow our children to dream, to have ambition, and to be able to encourage them to do things while they're showing signs and all, and not to stifle their creativity.
Yeah, definitely. Really good points there. And Paul, do you have anything to add on to our really interesting conversation on this?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And I think especially the most important point is that this ambition that we spoke about often comes in not just traditional ways. So I think parents need to be okay that young changemakers often go different ways than just like finishing a 4-year university degree or doing things that worked in the past, that worked for the parents themselves. So I think really supporting like unconventional paths, supporting taking risks, supporting things that might not become natural to them is something very important for parents of young changemakers to keep in mind.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And I see that we have a question that just came in that ties in really well with what we've been speaking about like university. So the question, I think, I mean, all three of you can comment on it, but I'll just begin with you, Adewale. So how do you get leaders and decision makers at a university that aren't open to listening to students, basically, and keep in mind that they're constantly saying in my time that it was harder and technology was not a thing?
If I understand the question, I think what we are doing as young people is that I think what most young people in Nigeria are doing is to learn it for themselves. We have a system that doesn't benefit you, that doesn't make you who you want to become. So you have to learn it yourself while you're still pursuing how to change them into your own part, and see if they can change the curriculum or change something or change the way with which education is being delivered in class. I think education should be much more about facilitation and not more about the teacher standing in class and telling you what to do. It's still much like that in Nigeria right now. So what we are doing as young people is that how can we engage ourselves? How can we talk amongst ourselves? How can we learn about? So volunteering, like I said, we volunteer with different organizations, and also we teach ESD, Education for Sustainable Development. We teach it amongst ourselves, and also for what we call it step down training. What we do is after we learn it amongst ourselves and learn it with different organizations, we go out there to communities, to different places, and also we have meetings with students, organizations, students, union government, the student union government of schools in Nigeria, also one of the most influential body in the school that's organized and run by the students themselves. So these are groups that we go to meet to also tell them what we think should be incorporated in the system and how we can change it.
Yes, of course. And I think, what you said about how universities and schools are still, in a lot of places, I don't think just Nigeria, but a lot of places I've seen, it's that educators often see schools and teachers as just knowledge providers and just disseminating information to students, and just very, very much a passive system. And then the students are just knowledge receivers. But I think, like you said, it's really important to give youth that space to basically create their own curricula and what they want. And I think like what you were saying about volunteering definitely ties in, or things like you said with experiential learning also ties in. So very good points there. So I think we have another question that just came in. So it says that there are many parent groups working on climate change, like parentsforfuture.org. And so has UNESCO tried to contact organizations like this one? I think that's directed at you.
Well, my answer is I don't know. because that's probably the science sector that takes care of the climate change networks. But I mean, in UNESCO, we're a huge organization, right? So like even with the question that Adewale was answering about universities and how young people can make change, and within UNESCO, it's the same thing. It's, you know, there are 1,000 over people in headquarters in Paris, and we're very, you know, working in our own sector. There's education, we have culture, we have science, and we have social and human sciences and communication. So, you know, everyone's kind of doing their own thing, and it really takes a lot of effort to just talk to people, find out what they're doing, and seeing ways in which that you can, you know, work together and collaborate. And I think it's really, you know, you have to really do it with a very deliberate way. You need to keep persevering. You need to keep, you know, even in the face of difficulties and challenges, which are definitely going to come up. I think that's definitely something that's inevitable as a young person. You know, you really face a lot of challenges, and it's really about keeping your head high and keeping, you know, trying to find ways to do it creatively. You know, whether you can show by doing, which really works a lot, I think, with adults, because, you know, everyone is so busy, and especially when you're working, you know, you have no time at all to do anything else. So obviously, new ideas sound good, but until they see it, they're just like, well, you know, I'll leave it until I'm done with my very important assignment, my very important meeting and report that I have to produce. So I think climate change networks, I know there's so many power groups out there, so many, you know, youth and student networks out there. Even in DG4 in education, I've also, you know, personally seen that there's so many interest groups out there, and everyone has a valuable voice. And I think the thing is about how we can work together in a very respectful way, in a meaningful way, to just keep in mind that we're all there at the end of the day to achieve the same goals, you know, and that we're stronger together.
Definitely, that hits the nail on the head again. And yeah, what you said about, I think, cooperation between different stakeholder groups, whether that be between like within, I guess, the same hierarchy of maybe like students to students or young people to young people, but also like between levels, for instance, with parents or with decision makers, I think is also really important. So just going back a bit to the, I guess, changemaker angle, and I'll address this one to Paul. So from your own experience, how do you see a changemaker journey like develop, would you say, and what are the sort of levers and obstacles you identify, whether it's in your own experience or what you've seen in other people's?
Yeah, very good question. So I think a couple of things. I think, like I said before, a lot of changemakers go through unconventional paths and go through paths that are not necessarily normal because they think it's right, or they think it's the best thing to do. And I think that comes one with the challenge that sometimes it's hard to find people that have different experiences and share those experiences. And I think especially then finding communities, and there are a lot of great communities out there that connect you with people that are on similar journeys are very, very powerful to come around those obstacles, not just in the sense of like your personal development, but also just they kind of supercharge your impact because you're just suddenly in a room with a lot of other people doing great things, and there are obviously a lot of things you can work on together. But I think in general, the biggest challenge is, and I'll sound a little bit like a broken record, is just come back to like being inspired and having someone that shows you and tells you, look, this is cool, right? I think every young person has ideas and every young person has ambition. Just some people have more opportunities and some people have more people that tell them, look, this is something you can do. This is something you should do. And I think once you have that person, that can be a teacher. That's why we find teachers so important. That can be a parent. That can be a neighbor. Whoever that is, I think almost every young change maker has that one person in their life they think back to, and it's like, that was the person that took the first bet on me. And that person is so incredibly important. So I think the big challenge is how can we provide a person like that to almost all young people with great ideas and ambitions, so they are able to become young change makers. And I think that's probably the biggest obstacle to become a young change maker.
Mm-hmm, yeah, for sure. And I think we can sort of encapsulate that under like I think, support as a whole. So whether that be resources, opportunities, space for them to voice what they care about, or even to things like role models and having that person you really look up to or want to emulate, or things like parents or teachers or peers who encourage you to take that first step. Definitely, I think it all falls under support, and how I think it's important that we try and expand that for more people and young people so that they can become young change makers in their communities. So, Adewale, do you want to add anything on to what Paul was saying?
Well, I think you mentioned something about collaboration, which I think is really so important, because what we've been able to achieve is much more is through collaboration we've had with different organizations. An example of what I'm going to give is Connected Development. It's an organization in Nigeria and also in other countries in Africa. And what they do is, one of the projects they do is follow the money. And what they do is that they track projects, different kind of projects, government-funded projects. Perhaps it was the money was disbursed maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and then you go to those sites where maybe a building has to be erected and there's nothing there in this community, or there's a pipe bomb water that was supposed to be provided, and there are no water system in the community. So what they do is to track those projects. And what we've been able to do also as young activists is to learn how they've been able to achieve this. And also, it's incredible, and you'll be amazed how many projects the federal government itself have been able to award out to contractors, but it gets caught up somewhere in the middle, and you don't get this project done. So what we do is we try to, as much as possible, we use the follow the money model. We try to go to the government, different stakeholders. We map out different stakeholders that are related to that. Maybe it's a building that's supposed to be provided in a university, so we map out different stakeholders. The vice chancellor of the university, the government, the minister of the state, the students, different young people are mobilize themselves and also ask questions all around. And when you keep asking, you keep pushing. And one thing you need to do is to be very respectful, because people like to be respected in Nigeria. So you don't go to them and demand, oh, how did you spend that money, or where did you throw the money, or did you just swallow the money? So you just have to massage their ego and let them understand that, oh, you're doing them a favor. You're doing them something good. You're telling them, oh, we want to improve the education system. So you tell them good things when you meet them, and then from there you build your questions. You be able to track from one another. And I mean, when they talk, they wouldn't know when they also release some of this information themselves. So we've been able to map out some projects, and incredible young people in activists in Nigeria been able to map out different projects all around education, around women empowerment, around water system in Nigeria, and it's incredible what they've been able to achieve.
Yeah, for sure. And Vivian, would you like to add anything on to what Paul and Adewale were saying?
I just wanted to say that what Adewale was saying was so powerful. It really shows, how young people can have the power to ensure accountability of the decision makers, and to keep track of that. And as he said, you keep asking questions, and it's about doing it in a way that makes sense, and you want to think about how you're trying to achieve an overall goal. So you're not there to, as you said, respect is so important in so many cultures, in the Asian culture as well, and also in the UN system, and it's about how you broach this topic. And yeah, just I think it's also understanding the power dynamics, which is something that you don't really learn in school. And how do you reach this person that seems unreachable? And these are things that, and I don't even know how to say this in words, because it's something that you learn and then you integrate into your actions in your everyday life. But it's really so important as well.
For sure. And I like what you said about, you obviously, again, with the respect thing, I think everyone wants to be respected in the end. But I think, like you said, we don't go into these places as young people and demand things. I think what you said about we explain why we want them and our motives behind it. I think everyone in the end wants the best for young people, and to give them that space to become change makers. I don't think anyone would be opposed to that. But I think, again, the angle that these young people come through just basically emphasizing that why they want this, as opposed to just saying that we just want you to change.
And also another thing we've come to realize, you need to have your facts right. You need to have your data. You need to have, when what was given out by the government, what are the projects you've been able to map out? Have they been? So you need to have your data. You need to have factual data you have at hand. So because you can just get arrested, and you need to also be able to collaborate with big organizations that you can always leverage on when you get arrested or when you get tied up somewhere. So it's important that we have our facts right, and we project our facts in a manner with which it's shows that we are here for a mission and we're not here to cause trouble, because they just throw you out or bundle you somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Having that data and that evidence for why you want that change, and to show that how many people also want it, I think is very powerful. So just, I guess, going a bit more back to your own personal experiences, because I think we can definitely always learn a lot from how you all ended up in where you are now. The question is what did you need most when you first started your journey? What was that thing which helped you on that first step in order to get into it? So I guess maybe Paul, would you like to begin us?
Sure. For me it was I think primarily great people to do it with. I think none of the things I've done, none of the projects I've worked on, I've done by myself. It's always a team effort, and I've always been able to do it with really, really amazing people. Most of them a lot smarter than me, and to have access to these people and to meet these people and to get inspired by these people it's a privilege, right? You find these people mostly in certain spots on this planet. That's also changing with a remote lifestyle, but before they were very centralized in certain areas of this world, and being able to go there and meet these people, I think helped me a lot, both to develop but also just to be able to build cool stuff, and probably by far the most important one for me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Paul. And what about you, Adewale?
What was important for me when I started out, I think it was an opportunity to be able to get access to different organizations that were able to groom me to what I've become today. And it's interesting when you ask different young people in Nigeria, what exactly do you want me to, how can we do this? And then you go to meet them, tell them we can achieve this together, we can do it. And they tell them, I need to feed myself. So they tell you their problem first. And I think it's really hard getting, convincing young people around. I think that was one of the obstacles we've had. I have personally to convince people to this action, this purpose, this mission that I'm trying to achieve, because there's so many young people with different problems in Nigeria. Some people are not employed, some people are out of school, some people can't pay their school fees, some people they just want something they can eat at that moment, and then you're talking to them about changing the society. It might seem absurd communicating that with them, but I think by large, working with different organizations and also learning, attending different workshops and training, and also I think it's important. Another thing I think would most beneficial is when we have organizations just so like UNESCO partner with different young people in different countries, not only in Nigeria or Africa alone, but all over the world, because education is something that's important all around the world. So we need organizations that be able to look for young people in the grassroots. There's so many multilateral organizations that come to Nigeria, and then they just go to one big company and then they take them to one rural community. They've been taking different people to wherever they come from. Whenever they come from there abroad, they just take them to that community. Another one come, they take them there. But when you collaborate with young people at the grassroots, they know they are the one that are feeling this the most. So they know the places that they can always connect you to. So I think collaboration is important, and learning and giving young people an opportunity to work, to serve, to intern, it goes a lot way in helping them.
For sure, it takes them such a long way, and that could even just a small opportunity or a small internship could make such a difference to someone's life. So that's super powerful. And now, Vivian, if you have anything to add on to what they were saying.
I think they both said it very well, and I will concur, with the access, it's the people that you meet. I think we've talked about it a lot during this session, but as you said, it's the opportunities that come about. For me, my job title is an associate program specialist. It doesn't really mean much. So beyond my job title, I really see my role as trying to change institutions from within. And that took a very, very long time for me to realize that I had this power to do so, because before this, obviously as a young person in a big bureaucracy, in a big structure, it's very easy to feel frustrated. And I think a lot of people during WISE have come to me and asked me like, oh, what's it like to work for the UN and for UNESCO? It sounds so exciting. And I think the short answer to this is that it's an incredible, incredible opportunity, but it's also incredibly frustrating. So it's, I don't think I would have been able to come to this stage of where, I have the confidence, to do things and to try to even change the way that we do business at UNESCO without having mentors and, managers who believed in me, who pushed me to, who pushed me to execute the ideas that I come up with. And I think that's really been a big changing point in my career and also in my life, to have that confidence to do so.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And I see that we have about 5 minutes left, so I think we'll go with our final question, but all three of you can give an extended answer, so we have enough time to go into depth with it. So the question is, how can young people engage in making a difference at the local and global level? So, okay, since Vivian, you just spoke, I'll give you a break for now. I think, Paul, would you like to begin with us?
Sure. I think most change actually starts on a local level, right? That's where you meet people. That's where you experience the problem. Very often the problems you're most passionate about and the problem we're trying to fix are the ones we personally experience. So usually what happens is you start experience the problem and you feel this urge to fix it. And I think then that usually starts in local communities. And what's very powerful these days is that local communities can very quickly grow into global communities. I think we see a lot of remote communities and remote networks of changemakers, both around verticals such as climate change or education, but also in general just around we want to have impact. So I feel they're a lot more connected these days than they used to be, also because our problems are a lot more global than they used to be. So I think what is important, though, is once a local community becomes a global community or a local community starts to work on global problems, that you don't forget that there is still the local community there that needs support, that needs attention, that needs a problem, that needs help to solve the problem. So I think actually the challenge is more how can I kind of combine the two in a more globalized world, and how can I make sure that the problems are solved for a lot of local communities and not just for kind of, in a sense, the most influential local communities on a global level.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And I think a lot of us, sometimes we get really caught up with global issues and thinking about the really, really big ones that are affecting countries all around the world. But it's also important to remember that so much of it affects local communities, and maybe, like you said, beginning with the local can lead us then to becoming closer to solving them at the global level. So thank you for your points there. Adewale, we're going to turn to you. So you can go ahead.
Well, I think he said it all, because it's important that you need to start from the local communities, because we have a global problem. We have a climate change in the world. It's a really, really global crisis that we need to really address. We've seen so many negative things, really bad things going around in the world as regards to climate change. But how can we make people understand climate change at the local level? I think we need to incorporate it also into our education system, because I'm not sure much is thought in Nigerian universities about the effect of climate change. That's why we need to redirect the purpose of education. I think education needs to be redirected to solve our immediate problems, because education, I think the purpose of education itself is to solve problem, because the education system we have, maybe it was designed 60 or 70 years ago. It was designed to solve a problem, to get young people, to get people that can work for the colonists in Nigeria, to get secretaries and all. That was the problem they've mapped out, and that was the kind of education they've been able to design to solve that problem. How about we redesign education in a way that solves our problem in our local communities, and how can we also communicate this to people at different... When I started, the first project I had was about also climate change too, in the community, flooded community, and about waste management. And whenever the rain falls in these communities, just get flooded, and so many people lose their properties, so many houses get destroyed and all. And these people do not understand what they're going to. When you go to meet them, they just, I need money to feed myself, I need money. They really do not understand. So what we were able to do is we collaborate with chiefs and different local government leaders in the society and also in the community, so able to educate them about the things that are going on and how the effects of climate change, how they could manage their waste and how they could recycle, the importance of recycling. So it's important that we incorporate this into our daily lives. So I think that's one of the places we can really start before we can achieve this globally, because we need to have a common prosperity in the world. We can have a country growing. An example, if you permit me to give, is the inequality in the vaccine and distribution in the world. We have so many countries holding, advanced countries holding vaccines. Why you can't just shut countries like South Africa forever. You still have people from there go to South Africa, migrate or visit other countries, and then they infect people in your country. So you never achieve anything if we don't have a common prosperity ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Very powerful words there. And I think so much was said, but your example of like the vaccine disparity between countries is again illustrates that point really well. Now we're going to turn now to you, Vivian, for our last segment. So what do you think, again, with the question about how young people can make a difference at the local and global level?
Yeah, so I think we need to look at concrete actions versus ideas and inspiration. So obviously, I think concrete actions really comes from locally, comes from everyday life, what you can do with the people that you see around you and in your own communities. And at the global level, there is work to do as well, but it's a lot slower, it takes time, and you don't see the results immediately. So that is something that can be frustrating, I think, especially for young people who want to see change immediately, who want to see leaders tackle climate change with a snap of a finger. But I think that there's two levels, and it's about, taking actions in your daily life, as Adewale was saying, while keep aspiring to change at the global level as well, and to keep fighting for it, keep pushing for it, and showing through your own actions that you as an individual can make a difference. And we keep talking these days about the metaverse, and I really have no idea what that means. So that's like another universe, right? And we can't even figure out how we can protect our one planet and live sustainably and live as a global community, and let alone multiple universe or metaverse. So that's really scary. And I think for me at least, I've seen really just how much impact individuals can bring, the inspiration that they give to others. And I think as long as we keep working together, we keep persevering and keep just innovating as human beings, we'll be able to resolve our common challenges.
100%. And I think that ties in really well with our conclusion, which is that how I think, although we began with speaking about how just the education systems can support young change makers or young people who want to make that change in their communities, I think we really well extended out and spoke about the role of parents in that, or the role of the wider society. So I think what was said today was very insightful. So thank you so much again to the three of you, and thank you to the questions that were sent in, and they were really insightful as well. So thank you for everyone for coming today, and I really hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference. And take care. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.